Okay, so here we are, and welcome to everyone who has been able to join us tonight. This is the Cancer New Moon, and on June 25th. So we're now in the prime of summer. We've just gone through the solstice, and that was pretty intense energy. And I mean, the solar flares is everything hitting the planet and atmosphere. It's a lot of energy right now. I mean, astrology is not quite as intense from what I've read. As far as wild things shifting or doing. Most of the shifts have already happened, but we are still in the beginning point. Saturn and Neptune and Aries. And of course, they're sextiling Pluto, which is workable energy, thank God, until they go retrograde later in the year. So at least, that's some positive energy. I think one of the astrologers was talking about a couple of yods that we're working through, Sun, Jupiter, and Cancer, I think, and the sextiling Mars. And so most of it, I think, is pretty workable energy. It's not too difficult, I don't think. But the biggest thing that I get from the whole thing, I mean, anytime you have a Cancer moon, that's always hearth and home and emotions and, the emotional body and what's happening with us on an individual level, but also on a collective level. And the other thing, I mean, the United States is a Cancer nation, hearth and home and everything else. And it's been a really interesting world as far as what we as a Cancer nation have been doing. And hopefully, things, what we have been doing has been, not something that's going to come back and pop us, too badly or out of balance as an energy event. Let me pull up my little, my sheet here. I think the most notable thing about this particular moon that we're in, and some of the astrologers, I saw it in some of their titles, but the new moon is when you have, the sun and the moon meeting up at the same spot. A full moon is when the sun is on the other, opposite side of the zodiac, and it brightens it up. But the new moon is, kind of in the sun. But the other thing that's really wild about this, and this does not happen a lot, Jupiter is sitting right on top of it. So that's called a Jupiter Cazimi. And that's Jupiter already expands and blows things up anyway. So imagine this moon, and it's a new moon, so it's new intentions, it's new creations, but it's got the energy of Jupiter really blowing it up with the sun. Another thing that's on top of this, and most of them don't talk about that, is there's a centaur, Asbolus, which is right on top of all of it. So anytime you have centaur energy, a lot of that addresses wounding. Asbolus also has an energy of it likes to blow up and magnify things as well. And so you've got two of those energies really interacting. And this is all happening at 3 Cancer. So it's an early degree of Cancer. And, of course, that is squaring Saturn and Neptune and Aries. So that doesn't mean it has to be difficult energy. It can bring challenges. But with the square, it's asking us how are we going to work with, the new dream, the new vision, Saturn, what we came here to do, and, Neptune, lower part, getting rid of delusions and illusions of things we thought were important, while also creating the new. And so I think that's really the bigger dynamic of things that are happening. And, of course, sextile Pluto, that's workable energy. Sextiles are workable. So that's, I think, overall a good thing. So I'm probably not going to go into heavy astrology today with regards to all of that. I've really been spending a lot of time on this sheet, adding in a lot of the different, some more of the asteroids, but I've got all the centaurs, and there's like 22 centaurs. It's crazy. But there's been some really interesting things that I've noticed with regards to the Judith asteroids, Judith and Linden. They're so predominantly placed in how they're traveling with my named asteroids. And also, Judith is actually traveling with an asteroid called Gregory. I pulled Pam Gregory, well, Pamela for Pam, and then Gregory. But Judith and Gregory are traveling together as asteroids in between my John asteroid and my last name asteroid. But then over in Scorpio, Linden and Pamela are not far away from each other in Sagittarius and Capricorn, just on the other side of, my natal Johnny name, and then Jonathan Murray, which is another asteroid. They're together with Juno, partnering, and Narcissus Centaur, which I didn't even pull that before, but all that stuff is happening in Scorpio, and so all that energy is trining. Well, actually, it's not really close because it's not 3 degrees, but Scorpio as a sign is trining Cancer as a sign. So I think if there's anything else in Cancer, there's flowing energy between what has happened in Scorpio and what's happening with us in Cancer now. And in later Cancer, we also have Mercury meeting the fate of Lachesis. That's one of the fates. The Achikla Centaur, as well as the Gregory and Judith asteroids. They're all at 29 degrees Cancer on this moon. And I think that really, I didn't even notice this till last night. I forgot it until I actually looked at it again. I mean, they're sitting on top of each other. And so anytime you have that, it's a power point. And the 29th degree of Cancer it's like an ending combustible energy, but it's also a creation before going into Leo. And my named asteroid's kind of like in the middle with White Moon, Selena, and Binor and Centaur. But the point that Judith is at the end of Cancer, I do think that she's really, as an eternal spirit, she's still working with all of our souls. I mean, she never went away. She's obviously gone the physical, but the fact that I saw her named asteroid with Pam Gregory last name and fates with Mercury and communication on the same timeline as this moon, and this moon actually hits their point tomorrow, tomorrow evening. So it's a very flowing energy, and all of that energy is trining all this stuff in Scorpio that we've had, all of these kind of deep revelatory initiations into because of the Lilith retrograde. The oscillating Lilith, because she goes forward and retrograde every month. But there's a lot of energy over there that's asking us to dig deep. So this moon is actually trining the Shapley attractor, which is one of the it's one of those galactic points. Those are hard to explain, but they really blow things up even more. And Haumea is also on that point. And, Pam Gregory talks about Haumea birthing babies from all over the body and all these things. I mean, it's a very Hawaiian type, thing. But that energy is flowing with us. So you can imagine that's working with us on a collective level of birthing, but it's also working with us on the individual level. And, Vesta of Hearth and Home is transiting right in the same area. It has just turned, she's just turned direct to go over it. And again, I didn't want to get into too much astrology, but all these energies are really in pretty flowing work for us. So although there are a lot of challenges, the energy is intense, what have you, we really are being supported on core levels in the unseen world, or at least with the astrological world, which, gives us the energy that we're working with. And so, again, I'm not going to go too deep in the astrology stuff today because Spirit really wanted me to take us more deeply into heart awareness and to really anchor in, rather than hear me talk about a lot of the energy, I mean, I'm setting it up, as far as an overview of it. But what we're really being invited to do is allow ourselves to know from the inside out what we're supposed to do and where we're supposed to go, rather than, doing something where we're just listening to something else. And then it's like sometimes we get sidetracked with what we hear from anything other than ourselves. And I certainly don't ever want to sidetrack anyone's core creation process. And we really have to learn to rely on our internal mechanisms, our hearts deeply immersed in the field. And again, this is, leaving the habituation away as well. It's like so many times we're in those habituated patterns where we get used to certain things and we say, oh, this is what's this is what I've always done. But that's really what we're walking away from. We don't want to do anything the way we've always done it. So, I mean, depending on what's happening in your own lives, there may be, well, like LaDonna mentioned, she's moving her 94-year-old mother into another apartment space due to circumstances, by no choice of her own. Certainly, there's a new creation there. So we're either creating the dynamic on our own, or we're co-creating it with family or whoever, and we're responding to what's needed in the moment, which is attending. I attended my father today and went and got one of his cousins that was born 4 days after him and went to go see his sister. And so I've had the whole people all again. But it really just, it drives home to me every time I'm in that particular nursing, rehab care facility, just how fragile life is. And I sat there and I was really observing as I walked down the hall to go to her room first, go get her, but all the different people that are in their rooms, and they're in their beds, and they're all in all these various levels of degradation with regards to their soul path and where they're at. I mean, all at seemingly end of life, patterns and things, and yet some of these people have been hanging on for years in these very deep, distorted states, and it really just it was an opening where Spirit just took me into an expansion of how many people, especially in the United States, are in this state where they either found a place where they either gave up on life, they either forgot how to live, how to want, how to be a curious, inquisitive, childlike presence. But it's like they created a place for themselves, and this is, I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people, and this is all around the world. It's not just here, but especially here because of the chemicals and foods and all the stuff we always talk about, pharmaceutical drugs. I mean, they're all drugged up. But how did we get into such a deep distortion? And I don't want to focus on the distortion. At the same time, there's still something about our capacity to go in and send healing energy to all of the different levels of distortion, especially for souls that are deeply trapped. It's like, I mean, all these people seem to just be trapped in their own bodies. And many of them are, either through strokes or some of the disease pattern, but a lot of it's mental. And I think that's one of the problems, with the United States. We push ourselves to be so mental with our creations. And it's one of the things, I mean, as all of you, have worked with Judith in the workshops know, there's so many times we would respond to her when she would ask questions, or Spirit would inquire for, where are you at, different things. And we would would say something, and she'd be like, okay, that's nice. That's nice and mental. Now go deeper. and you may, I mean, if you're like me, you're just sitting in frustration, like, seriously, really? I thought I was doing pretty good. I thought I gave a pretty good response. I thought it was in my heart. I thought I responded heartfully. And she's like, no, that was mental. I'm like, okay. So what does that mean, to be able to really go beyond the mental, to go beyond the mind's perception of reality and what's happening around us? And that really is what we're being taken into. And this moon, again, it's Cancer. It's a feeling moon. With Jupiter blowing it up, we have the capacity to fall so deeply into the Great Mother, into our divine feminine expression. And, I mean, we're never cut off from that. At the same time, though, this really opens up a space to take us in to do some really deep work, but also create from a place that we're not usually used to creating in. And so I think that's the biggest thing that really wants to come forth. And again, I mean, I haven't read a lot of the astrology. I just haven't had a chance. At the same time, I think we're being invited, at least in this particular moment. I mean, I kind of worried that I wasn't getting some of the stuff out to you guys for the last 2-3 weeks. And then Spirit said, well, you don't have to worry about that, because everyone's where they're supposed to be, and they're getting what they need. And the other thing that was presented to me was, well, what would happen if if each person that listens to the call were to go into personal self-inquiry? If they really wanted to know the information, would they go and dig? And I was like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. I was taken into a whole different dynamic of why I guess I got sidetracked, because usually Spirit leads me pretty well on sending this and sharing this, but I was just like, why? And it was just kind of imprinted on me today that it was to allow every person the chance to go and find out what they would find on their own. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's like, how hungry are you for your own awakening process, and how hungry are you for information? And if so, and this is for just each person to observe, how did you make those choices? Were you sitting in deep contemplation of things that's going on in life and wondering, I wonder what so-and-so astrologer would have said if Jonathan had sent it? How many people really would have just gone on to Facebook and or gone back to previous emails and looked at some of the names, and then maybe went on Facebook and looked for those names just to see what got written? There's something about, and Spirit was really clear with me on this, how do we take ownership of co-creating our life? The one thing we don't want to do is just have someone spoon feed us information or wisdom. And I never want to do that. I mean, I certainly want to, share things that are going to make things, assist, everyone to get from point A to point B. But there's something in this energy that says we have to become more autonomous and more active in our own role in soul progression. So, as each of you go back and you kind of look at the last, 3, this ends up being about 4 to 6 weeks, when I really haven't been able to send an email. How many of you really have been able to look at that? And so that brings a point of, self-inquiry to yourself, just as a self-observance, no judgment. And it's not about a right or wrong. But how many, of you did go into further inquiry in searching for information or things, on your own? So that was just kind of, I guess, an unknown exercise. That's what happened anyway. It's what got created. And it all really culminates up to this, which is this new moon. And this is a heartfelt creation, and it's 3 degrees is not very advanced in Cancer, but it is a 3. It kind of represents Holy Trinity. It's not a 0 degree, like Aries with Saturn and Neptune, that they're hanging around the beginning degrees. But 3 is it's a beginning, but it's a wholly balanced beginning. It takes three legs of a tripod minimum to create a self-standing anything like an energy. You can actually have a stool on 3 legs. You can't have a stool on 2 legs or 1 leg as a general rule, but it requires a minimum of 3 points. I mean, a lot of them are 4 or more, but usually 3 to 4. But there's something that's very symbolic about the 3, and to have this Jupiter expansive thing with creation. So if we go back and observe where we were with the eclipses in March and April, and you think back to things that you wanted to create at that time, where are you at in your own journey to create some of those things? Are there things that you thought were important and now you've looked at them and say, that really wasn't so important? Or have you still been doing a lot of clearing and, releasing things in the physical and physicality to release your density, which creates a lighter presence that you're in to allow for new creations to come in and materialize. I mean, everything's energy, everything's a frequency. So as we open up the space, we're putting out a frequency of, I'm ready to create something new, then Spirit can bring us new things. And if we're deeply immersed heartfully, we're co-creating the things that are coming into our lives. So where are you with that? And this moon is really a perfect time to look at that. I think I was reading one of these things too that was talking about this moon is going to be in an opposition point, well, not complete opposition, to the Capricorn full moon in 2 weeks. And I forget where that one is going to be. Let me look, see where it is next time, just so that I will know. That's in Capricorn. Where are you at? Where are you hiding? There it is. July 10th, the full moon will be in Capricorn. It's at 18 Capricorn, so it's not completely opposite of this one, but it's the opposite sign. Capricorn and Cancer are an axis. So, we're creating in Cancer now, but Capricorn is structure. Full moon, a lot of times that's releasing. So we're going to be releasing structures that no longer serve us and work with us. That moon doesn't really have anything coming over it or being aspect to it, not as conjunction anyway. But so anyway, that's kind of where we're at with these things. And again, I'm not going to talk a lot with this one because Spirit's kind of leading me into more of an energy where we're invited to just sit and ask, Spirit to come in and bring forth that energy to work with us. So I'm gonna take us into meditation earlier tonight to go in and do. I mean, if it means healing, obviously we'll do healing energy. It depends on where you are, of course, in soul progressions and what's happening. But I think we may be in a place where we've done a lot of the healing work, and we're now in a place to allow the new creations to come forth. And depending on where you are, you'll know if you've already got some stuff opened up for this or not, and then how you'll be working with that energy. And if you're not, that's perfectly okay. Don't try to force any concept or notion to come forth that's just not there, because that certainly does not it doesn't help anyone. It does not serve a purpose, because there's no right or wrong way to any of this. The main thing is that we are still going into our heart and deferring, I think, from our mind of creating things that we think are important. Now, if we're deeply immersed, in our own hearts, but also with Spirit, then Spirit can, create through us for where we're at in this particular challenging time of energy, because it's a lot. And at the same time, all that's going on, we're still releasing. As long as we're here on this planet, we're going to be releasing energy. We're going to be, going through all of these processes, and still allowing, for the divine to create something through us. And it doesn't have to be some big spectacular anything. It may just, be attending family, friends, community, whatever it is. And again, there's no comparison with this. So I don't want to lead any of this into a comparison, because it's not what any of this is about. I will say, just to remind us, we're still going through deep disintegration, and that's going to happen through all of this year into next year, and that disintegration again is happening because of the fact that Neptune and Saturn, even though they're in Aries, they're going to go back into Pisces. So they're going to go back into the old dream, just to really do any last clear outs. And that's not till later this year. So, I wish I could say we're going to, feel like we're going to get some relief, but I don't think we're not going to be fully into the newest creations until, next spring, I don't think. And that doesn't have to be a down thing. I just want, I want all of us to be really conscious about what that's going to look like. So, okay, well, let's just get still and let's go into this and see what comes up. So if your mind is really, if you have a lot going on in your mind, if there's a lot of ideas, concepts that are just coming at you, go into your heart and ask yourself, what's important with those concepts? What's important with, are there any of the things that come to you as something that's going to be good to work with, as something that's going to stick with you, something you can create a positive future vision for yourself, your family, friends, what have you. Is it things that are still creating a limitation? Are there parts of your life that are still not in the highest expansion possible? And if so, how can you shift things in your reality to create that? I think is one of the big things. How do we create that as a wonderful shift? And yeah. So if you're not in your quiet, nice space, place yourself there. And just kind of breathe in and let yourself just be taken over by Spirit. If you do feel like that you still have some stuff that you want to get released, some things you want to heal from, if there's still distorted thought forms that kind of still want to creep in, if there are challenging sets of circumstances that you just don't know how to navigate, just imagine a cosmic fire. Imagine that Saint Germain and the Violet Flame is just here, and you toss all of that into the flame, and you just let Spirit burn that away. More importantly, let this be a time when each of you truly step into your own power. Now, I'm taking us into this particular frequency, but rather than lead you in with a deep guided meditation, we're in this frequency, and I'm going to get out of the way. We're going to go into just complete satsang silence. We've amplified this collective energy to a point where we're used to these frequencies now. It doesn't take any time to get there. When we come together in union and communion, everything's immediate now. So I think the point with this Cancer moon is to really allow ourselves to connect with the divine feminine, which is Jupiter expanding all of this with the sun, and we've got Asbolus as a centaur, which is coming in and also blowing it up and amplifying it as well. And again, the big thing with this is taking your own power, for not having to have anyone else project a value on what this looks like. We're just going to connect in to the great central sun and the great central sun, and so on and so forth. The Milky Way, the beginning of the galaxy. We're in the galactic center. That was another thing. The Judith asteroid, I forget when it starts, but she's basically diving into the galactic center. She's going to be hanging with the galactic center almost for the rest of the year, I believe. I forget the time period. But how fitting that our teacher, as an energy event, the Judith asteroid, is diving in and sitting in the galactic center. I can totally see her doing that. I mean, she was going into all of that here, but as an asteroid, has a presence, the frequency of the name Judith is sitting in the galactic center. So she's basically here attending all of this with us. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But that's where her asteroid is, in the galactic center, or approaching it, somewhere in there. So just go in. And ask Spirit to work with you and give you imagery, either perhaps just giving you thoughts or ideas, pictures, scenery, whatever, however Spirit wants to work with you in the higher realms of communication. And we're just going to go really deep into this. So just welcome silence and really commune with Mother, Father, God in pure balance as we amplify the divine feminine. Hey everyone. It's been a pretty deep journey. Just sit with all of this and see what comes forth as your heart deeply expands with this Cancer new moon to see what comes forth and wants to be created for you. Eternal love and many blessings to all of you.